Hello and welcome to the 6th episode of Let's Talk About Electric Vehicles. My name is Teresa, I'm an economist and I try to answer general questions about the e-mobility transition from a scientific and research-based perspective. After decades of being solely focused on internal combustion engines, more and more people around the globe start questioning the prevalent mobility system and begin to look for some improvement. In general, we currently observe a disruption in the automotive industry as a substantial share of consumers shows this openness for new technology. And with climate change, oil dependencies, and urban air quality problems becoming more and more severe, particularly electric mobility gained a lot of interest. More and more evidence suggests that vehicles that run by electricity instead of gas are not only lower in carbon emissions, but also their performance in cost and their performance in convenience shows potential to outperform diesel and gasoline cars. By the way, even for higher shares of fossil fuel energy generation. And in case you don't believe a word of what I've just said, just check out some of my earlier episodes for more details. So far, we've mainly talked about the battery electric vehicle, but thanks to this dynamic turmoil and disruption in the mobility sector, there is enough space on the market for startups, for creativity, and for innovation. So basically, any smart technology invention has a reasonable chance to compete with the big players in the automotive industry. Therefore, electric mobility describes a large variety of electric solution concepts, and the battery electric vehicle is only one of them. Today, we will talk about the hydrogen fuel cell technology, as I keep receiving questions about it from you guys in my emails, so many of you have probably heard of hydrogen cars before. I plan on explaining what that is first, and then we will talk about its market potential, and without further ado, let's jump right into it. So, how does this work? What is fuel cell? How does it work? The chemical reaction of recombining hydrogen and oxygen to water can generate energy, and its only byproduct is this resulting water, and therefore hydrogen, which was initially produced by separating the water, has a potential to be a very efficient energy storage. Thus, pure hydrogen is an alternative to batteries. And since oxygen is easily available in our ambient air, there is this idea of carrying a hydrogen tank on board of the vehicle instead of a gasoline tank, and powering an electric motor with the energy that is generated on board. There is also a little storage battery, but this is only used to provide extra power during starting or during hard acceleration. But how does a hydrogen fuel cell car generate its own power on board? By using the fuel cell, and this fuel cell consists of an anode and a cathode separated by a thin membrane. The hydrogen is pumped from the vehicle's tank into the anode side, while air is sent to the other side, to the cathode side. And then the magical chemical reaction happens. The hydrogen reacts with a catalyst at the anode, splitting it into positively charged ions and negatively charged electrons, and only the positively charged ions can get through the membrane. But the electrons, they have to make their way over via an external circuit, and this is what creates the electrical current. And as I've said, the only byproduct aside from heat is water, which the vehicle emits in form of steam. And because an average fuel cell creates only about 1 volt of electricity, a vehicle has to have a whole stack of fuel cells on board, together with modules that control the flow of hydrogen and water, and together with a cooling system, and of course with the tank full of hydrogen. And similarly to refueling a gas tank, the hydrogen refueling process takes less than 5 minutes. The energy density is apparently about the same as a gallon of gasoline, but since a fuel cell is twice as efficient as a gas engine, it will take you twice as far with one tank. As promising as all of this sounds, hydrogen cars come with three primary obstacles: safety, cost, and infrastructure. The safety concerns relate to the low ignition temperature of hydrogen. If it is stored under high pressure, it is even very likely to explode. But there's one relative advantage in comparison to the also, remember, highly inflammable gasoline. Hydrogen is lighter than air, and therefore, in case of an accident, it just escapes into the atmosphere instead of remaining in the vehicle. As you can probably imagine, hydrogen cars come at this point in time at least with exorbitant cost. Not only the purchasing price starts around 50 to 60,000 US dollars, but also the hydrogen to fuel the car is not cheap. So far, only few manufacturers offer a commercial hydrogen fuel cell car, including Hyundai, Toyota, and Honda. I found numbers that indicate prices of $12 to $16 per kilogram of hydrogen in the United States, but with predictions of further decreases to around only $4. It requires a full tank of 5 kilogram hydrogen for an approximate driving range of 480 kilometers, and according to my calculation, that sums up to $60 to $80 per 480 kilometers, or for my American listeners, 300 miles. So for sure, less than 30 cents per mile with the current prices, and further price reductions are very likely. Whereas the potential in further price reduction lies in improving the hydrogen production process and the hydrogen distribution. There is clearly an incentive for further research and development, as hydrogen is not only of interest for the automotive industry, but for the whole energy sector as well, as it is a sustainable energy storage unit. In previous episode of this podcast, we have learned about how important energy storage will be for the reliability of our electricity grid, regardless of whether electric vehicles break through or not. Establishing a hydrogen infrastructure is obviously harder than establishing a battery electric vehicle infrastructure, since hydrogen is not yet easily available. One possible process to separate water into hydrogen and oxygen is called electrolysis, and you only require electricity and water to do so. Another method is steam reforming of natural gas, or of coal, or even of oil. So in any case, the cost of hydrogen production relies heavily on the cost of electricity. But even if cheap hydrogen production is possible, there is still the problem of distribution, because the transportation in trucks would be too inefficient. However, should hydrogen really become the main focus of energy storage, there is this idea of using existing natural gas pipelines for the transportation. So, okay, hydrogen is not easily accessible, but this does not count for water and electricity, so a possible solution for the distribution problem would be to install hydrogen production and storage facilities at every single refueling station. The company Shell already did install such a station in London, and it produces 80 kilograms of hydrogen per day. To sum up what we've learned in that part, with electricity, we can separate water into hydrogen and oxygen, and we can store the hydrogen for later usage, or we can fuel a vehicle tank with it. And if energy is required, we can reverse this process, thus recombining oxygen and hydrogen, and generate energy through the resulting chemical reaction. The only byproducts are heat and water. The only required inputs are electricity and water. The production price and the environmental impact depend on the type of electricity resource. So now we're coming to its market potential. There is a very interesting study by Williams and Coriani from 2006 that estimates the potential initial market share for hydrogen fuel cell cars. First of all, the authors claim that the potential of hydrogen cars lies in offering a value that goes beyond what we expect today from a basic vehicle. Offering the hydrogen car simply as a cleaner version of a conventional car is just not enough. In particular, they are talking about mobile energy solutions, And additionally, there is some potential in focusing on market niches such as forklifts, for example, but this particular study did not take that into account. They are solely focusing on what electric cars can offer that goes beyond the gasoline car's capabilities in the context of mobile energy. But what is mobile energy? We have talked about it a bit at the end of the last episode, if you can remember. Recall that an electric vehicle, as it obviously has to store energy capacity on board to power the electric motor, is basically an energy storage unit on wheels. So the term mobile energy refers to the interaction of electric vehicle energy storage and other energy systems. That includes, of course, the importing of energy to charge the vehicle battery, but also the other way, exporting energy from the vehicle to, for example, appliances to provide emergency power, to contribute to grid stabilization, and many other forms of utilization. Now, coming back to the study that calculates the fuel cell market potential. The authors assumed in their calculation that fuel cell cars offer the benefit of mobile energy. This is their basic assumption. What they then did is that they looked at the population in California, in the United States, and they applied some restrictions to filter the population such that only those who have the bare ability to benefit from a hydrogen car with mobile energy remain in the target segment. So yeah, you heard me right, it's just about the ability. This says nothing about personal preferences such as range desires. Since California is known for strong regulatory support of alternative mobility concepts, and it's also known for a higher consumer demand for green technologies, the actual demand for fuel cell cars might be higher in California than in other places, but that does not play a role in this study as it does not look at the preferences, but rather at the maximum pool from which initial fuel cell sales are most likely to be drawn. The common sense filters that they use dramatically reduce the size of the initial market potential from 34 million overall Californians to only 5 million that are currently able to use a fuel cell car. This is a reduction of 85%. They eliminated, for example, those households who did not have a proper home connection hardware and did not have the financial stability to become an early adopter of fuel cell car technology with this mobile energy benefit. In total, they came up with 25 filtering criteria, and if you want to know more details about their approach, just check out my references in the show notes. So the target segment for fuel cell cars is 5 million households in California. The interesting question, is this sufficient as a market base? On the one hand, even 50,000 vehicles, which is only 1% of the 5 million, could be enough to maintain the interest in the technology. And furthermore, recall that the number that they came up with is just a snapshot of the current situation. The most households were excluded with the filter if the residences were too old to have the electrical hardware to make use of the mobile energy benefit. So improvements in this and in other filter categories are very likely. But then on the other hand, there is this dooming chicken-egg problem of infrastructure and vehicle sales. Building hydrogen stations must be justified by enough car sales, but people don't buy cars if there is no infrastructure. The high uncertainty about hydrogen storage technologies and the refueling infrastructure makes automotive manufacturers hesitant. One possible solution for the chicken-egg problem seems to be a sound home refueling strategy, so early adopters don't rely on infrastructure right away. Home refueling requires either an electrolysis hydrogen production station at home or access to natural gas and install a steam reforming production station at home, but both comes with quite large upfront investments. To sum up what we've learned from this episode today, the target segment of early hydrogen fuel cell car adopters is quite small, but not necessarily too small to maintain interest in the technology. Hydrogen, as a promising energy storage alternative, plays an important role in other industries as well. Therefore, we can expect further technology improvements and further price reductions. And as for the automotive sector, electric cars, including battery and fuel cell alike, they offer more than just being a cleaner version of gasoline cars. With mobile energy opportunities, they offer a value that goes far beyond to what consumers expect from a conventional car today. So in this regard, it is important for manufacturers to include these perspectives in the commercialization. We have reached the end of the episode. I hope that I could teach you something new today. You will find all of my references and contact information in the show notes. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me for feedback or for further topic suggestions. I'm very much looking forward to talking about electric vehicles again next week. Have a wonderful day. Bye!